In the mid-1960s, television thought it had finally cracked science fiction. Color TV was new, budgets were rising, networks wanted spectacle, and one show decided it wasn't going to play it safe at all. Instead of aliens or monsters, it went straight for history itself. Battles, executions, disasters, Titanic, Pearl Harbor. Not hinted at, not implied, dropped straight into the middle of them. The idea was simple. Two scientists get trapped in time and can't get home. The reality was anything but. Behind the scenes, this show was burning money at a rate television had never seen. Actors hated each other. Episodes were censored, cut, or refused by stations. Entire scenes were stitched together from old movies just to survive another week. And when it finally ended, it didn't end at all. No return home, no resolution. Just silence. Today, the time tunnel is remembered as a cult sci-fi curiosity. But at the time, it was one of the biggest, boldest, and most reckless experiments television ever attempted, and almost everything that could go wrong did. These are 16 weird, real facts about the time tunnel. How it nearly broke its network, fractured its cast, and stranded its own heroes in time because the money ran out. Number 16. The show was financially doomed before it ever aired. Before the time tunnel even reached television screens, it had already crossed a line no TV show had crossed before. The pilot alone cost around $4 million, an unheard of number in 1966. At a time when most television series didn't spend that much on an entire season, ABC approved a single episode that quietly became the most expensive pilot in TV history. The decision was driven by confidence in Irwin Allen's recent successes, but it also locked the show into a financial corner it would never escape. That spending didn't stop once the series went weekly. Regular episodes came in at roughly $250,000 each, nearly double the average television budget of the era. Massive sets, elaborate effects, and constant period recreations meant every new episode cost more than the last. Even when ratings were solid, the math no longer worked. The show wasn't just expensive, it was structurally unsustainable. By the time viewers were meeting Tony Newman and Doug Phillips for the first time, the network was already panicking behind the scenes. The time tunnel didn't fail slowly. It was born oversized, overfunded, and out of scale with television economics, and from that moment on, it was racing a clock it could never beat. Number 15. It was canceled even though millions of people were watching. By traditional television standards, the time tunnel was not a failure. It pulled in tens of millions of viewers per episode and regularly ranked respectably in the weekly ratings. In another context, those numbers would have guaranteed a renewal. But this was not a normal show, and ABC wasn't judging it by normal rules. Behind the scenes, the network's business department reached a brutal conclusion. The series was losing money every single week. Advertising revenue simply couldn't keep up with the cost of producing the show. The higher the ratings climbed, the more expensive each episode became to justify. Popularity didn't matter if the math didn't work. In early 1967, ABC made a decision that stunned viewers. Despite solid audience numbers and a loyal fan base, the show was canceled after just one season. The time tunnel didn't disappear because people stopped watching. It disappeared because television economics caught up with ambition, and the network pulled the plug anyway. Number 14. ABC offered to save the show, but only by gutting it. After deciding the series was too expensive to continue as is, ABC didn't immediately walk away. Instead, the network made Irwin Allen an offer. The time tunnel could return for a second season if he accepted a drastically reduced budget. The new target was around $150,000 per episode, a cut so severe it would have stripped away the very things that defined the show. Allen refused. He believed the series couldn't survive creatively at that level, not with large-scale historical settings, period costumes, and effects-heavy action every week. Cutting the budget that deeply would have meant smaller stories, fewer locations, and a visible drop in quality. In Allen's mind, that wasn't saving the show, it was dismantling it. ABC didn't negotiate further. The moment Allen said no, the decision was final. The time tunnel wasn't canceled because no one wanted it anymore. It ended because its creator chose to protect the idea rather than keep it alive in a form he believed would fail. Number 13. The Titanic episode used real survivor testimony as dialogue. When the time tunnel tackled the sinking of the Titanic, the production didn't treat it like just another historical backdrop. Writers pulled actual lines from survivor accounts and official hearings, weaving real testimony directly into the episode's dialogue. For 1966 television, that level of research was almost unheard of, especially for a weekly sci-fi series. The episode followed the documented timeline of the disaster with unusual care. Details about the collision, the evacuation, and the ship's final moments were grounded in historical records rather than invention. Historians later noted that, aside from the fictional time travel interference, the episode was one of the most accurate Titanic dramatizations of its era. Ironically, that commitment to realism made the episode stand out in a show increasingly stitched together under budget pressure. It became the highest-rated episode of the series, proving that when the time tunnel slowed down and respected history, audiences noticed. Number 12. The Pearl Harbor episode triggered international backlash before it aired. When ABC announced that the time tunnel would dramatize the attack on Pearl Harbor, the reaction didn't stay domestic. Japanese officials protested through diplomatic channels, arguing that the episode risked reopening wartime wounds and damaging US-Japan relations. This wasn't viewer mail or press complaints. It was government-level pressure before a single frame had aired. The network panicked. ABC demanded extensive script changes, softening language and reframing scenes to emphasize tragedy on both sides rather than blame. Irwin Allen fought to keep the episode intact, insisting that history shouldn't be sanitized, but compromises were forced into the final cut. Even after revisions, the episode still drew angry responses when it aired on the 25th anniversary of the attack. What was meant to be a bold historical story became one of the most controversial hours of television the show ever produced, and a clear sign that the time tunnel was wandering into territory network TV wasn't prepared to handle. Number 11. Some ABC stations refused to air entire episodes. The controversy surrounding the time tunnel didn't stop with ABC's executives. In several cases, local ABC affiliates outright refused to broadcast entire episodes, deciding on their own that the subject matter crossed a line for their audiences. This wasn't about ratings or scheduling. It was about fear of backlash. The most notable incident involved the Billy the Kid episode. Stations in New Mexico and parts of Texas objected strongly to how the outlaw was portrayed. In those regions, Billy the Kid wasn't just a historical figure, he was part of local identity. Some saw him as a folk hero, others as a violent criminal, and the episode's more sympathetic interpretation managed to anger both sides at once. ABC chose not to fight the affiliates. Instead, those stations were quietly allowed to pull the episode and replace it with reruns, creating a fragmented national broadcast where viewers in different states saw completely different programming that night. It was an embarrassing situation for the network, and another reminder that the time tunnel was constantly colliding with cultural and historical nerves that 1960s television wasn't equipped to handle. Number 10. Network censorship repeatedly reshaped finished episodes. Even after episodes were written, filmed, and edited, the time tunnel wasn't safe. ABC's Standards and Practices Department regularly stepped in after the fact, demanding cuts to scenes that were already complete. The problem wasn't science fiction. It was history. Executions, battlefield deaths, firing squads, and mass casualties were considered too graphic for family television, even when they were historically accurate. Episodes involving Custer's last stand, World War I, and other real conflicts were heavily trimmed or reworked. In some cases, entire sequences were removed, forcing editors to patch together what remained just to get the episode on the air. Irwin Allen fought these changes constantly. He argued that sanitizing real events defeated the purpose of sending characters into history in the first place. The network disagreed. As a result, several episodes aired in severely edited versions, and some deleted footage was never restored. What viewers saw wasn't always the story the creators intended. It was the version that survived the censor's desk. Number 9. Budget limits forced one actor to play multiple historical characters. As production costs spiraled, the time tunnel began cutting corners in places viewers didn't expect. One of the strangest solutions involved Whit Bissell, who already appeared in every episode as Dr. Raymond Swain, one of the scientists monitoring the time travelers from the present. Because the show couldn't afford additional guest actors, Bissell was quietly cast as multiple unrelated historical figures across different episodes, including military officers and authority figures separated by centuries. The show made little effort to disguise him. No heavy makeup, no dramatic transformation, just the same face turning up again and again in different eras. Audiences noticed immediately. TV listings and magazines mocked the decision, joking that Bissell must have had ancestors scattered across all of history. Behind the scenes, the choice wasn't creative, it was financial. The time tunnel had reached the point where even hiring a guest star was sometimes too expensive, and viewers were watching the budget strain show up on screen. Quick pause. If you're enjoying these deep dives into the shows that push television too far, hit like. It helps this channel more than you think. And if you want more behind-the-scenes stories about ambitious projects that nearly broke the system, subscribe. These aren't plot summaries. These are the things that went wrong when nobody was paying attention. All right, back into the tunnel. Number 8. Irwin Allen never wanted two heroes trapped in time. From the very beginning, the time tunnel was built on a compromise its creator didn't believe in. Irwin Allen's original concept followed one scientist, alone and lost in history, with the tension coming from isolation and the struggle to survive without help. ABC executives rejected that idea almost immediately. The network insisted on two protagonists, believing a duo would be more relatable, more marketable, and easier to sell to audiences. Allen agreed, but reluctantly. Behind the scenes, he later admitted that writing for two time travelers created constant structural problems. Every episode had to split focus, duplicate danger, and invent reasons for both men to survive situations that should have killed them. That decision rippled through the entire series. Stories became repetitive, stakes softened, and the emotional weight Allen originally envisioned was diluted. What looked like a small network note ended up reshaping the show's identity, and creating a problem its creator never fully solved. Number 7. The two lead actors couldn't stand each other off screen. On screen, Tony Newman and Doug Phillips were written as close colleagues fighting to survive history together. Off screen, the reality was the opposite. James Darren and Robert Colbert openly disliked each other throughout production, creating a tense atmosphere that everyone on set noticed. The conflict came from clashing personalities and career paths. Darren, a former teen idol and singer, reportedly resented being tied to what he saw as low-prestige television science fiction. Colbert, a working actor grateful for steady employment, found Darren's attitude dismissive and unprofessional. The resentment never cooled. Their hostility became so obvious that their dressing rooms were placed on opposite sides of the studio, and directors occasionally filmed them separately, stitching scenes together in the edit. Ironically, that forced professionalism helped sell their on-screen chemistry. But behind the camera, the friction was one more problem the time tunnel never managed to fix. Number 6. Stock footage quietly took over the series. As costs spiraled out of control, the time tunnel survived by borrowing from the past. Literally. Large portions of many episodes were built from stock footage pulled from 20th Century Fox's film library, sometimes making up more than 40% of an episode. Battle scenes, explosions, crowd shots, and even major historical moments were lifted from older movies and documentaries. Editors became specialists at matching fresh footage with material that was sometimes decades old, cutting between crisp new shots and visibly grainy film in the same scene. Careful viewers began to notice the repetition. The same explosions appeared in different wars. The same crowd shots showed up in unrelated disasters. What started as a cost-saving measure slowly reshaped the show's visual identity, turning the time tunnel into a patchwork of new ideas held together by recycled history. Number 5. The show's massive set became a financial trap. The time tunnel's most famous feature, the glowing spiral corridor and control room, was also one of its biggest problems. The set was enormous, built by combining multiple structures and stages and dressing them to look like a single underground complex. Visually, it was striking. Financially, it was a nightmare. The size of the set meant constant maintenance, lighting, and crew costs, even when scenes didn't require it. Every episode paid the price for that ambition. Whether the story called for spectacle or not, the tunnel couldn't be scaled down, reused cheaply, or avoided. It was always there, always expensive. What was meant to be the show's signature became a weight it couldn't escape. The set locked the time tunnel into a level of spending that television simply wasn't built to sustain. And every week, it stayed standing. The clock ticked faster toward cancellation. Number 4. Reused sets and props were quietly stitched into almost every episode. As the budget strain intensified, the time tunnel began borrowing from itself and from Irwin Allen's other shows. Control panels, equipment, and entire set pieces were recycled from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and other Allen productions, often redressed just enough to pass as something new. This wasn't a one-off shortcut. It became routine. The same blinking lights, consoles, and background machinery appeared again and again, sometimes in completely different historical eras. Sharp-eyed viewers noticed the repetition, and jokes began circulating about Allen's traveling props moving through time along with the characters. Behind the scenes, the reuse wasn't laziness. It was survival. With money evaporating, the production leaned on anything already built to keep episodes moving. What audiences saw as futuristic continuity was, in reality, a show cannibalizing its own past to stay on the air. Number 3. The show was stitched together week to week just to stay alive. By the second half of the season, the time tunnel wasn't being produced like a confident hit. It was being patched together under constant financial stress. Scripts were rewritten late, locations were reused aggressively, and episodes were assembled with whatever footage could be made to work. The goal wasn't perfection anymore, it was survival. Production schedules tightened to the point where crews had little margin for error. If a scene ran long or a setup failed, there was rarely time or money to fix it properly. That pressure explains why some episodes feel uneven, rushed, or oddly structured. They weren't failing creatively, they were racing the clock. What makes this remarkable is that viewers were never supposed to notice. The show presented itself as a grand, controlled experiment in time travel, while behind the scenes it was being held together by compromises. The time tunnel didn't collapse all at once. It limped forward, one episode at a time, until the budget finally ran out. Number 2. Future blockbuster visual effects talent cut their teeth on this show. Behind all the chaos, the time tunnel quietly became a training ground for people who would later reshape movie effects. The series effects team was led by L.B. Bill Abbott, already respected for his television work, but working under brutal constraints forced constant invention. Nothing could be wasted. Every shot had to count. Young effects assistants learned optical printing, miniature photography, matte work, and compositing by necessity, not luxury. One of those lessons would echo years later in Hollywood, when similar techniques were scaled up for big-screen science fiction. The swirling time vortex alone was created with simple mechanical tricks, spinning artwork, ripple glass, and careful camera timing, yet it became one of the show's most memorable images. It's one of the great ironies of the time tunnel. While the series itself was collapsing under its budget, the people working on it were quietly gaining the skills that would fuel the next generation of visual effects, long after the tunnel itself shut down. Number 1. The show ended with no ending and stranded its heroes forever. When the time tunnel aired its final episode, viewers had no idea it was the end, and neither did the story. The episode played out like any other adventure, with Tony and Doug jumping into yet another historical crisis. No return home, no warning, no closure. Then the show was gone. Irwin Allen had known for months that cancellation was likely, but he deliberately avoided writing a true finale. He believed that leaving the story open might convince ABC to reconsider. It didn't. The network canceled the series anyway, and the characters were left permanently lost in time, mid-jump, with no resolution after 30 weeks of buildup. What makes this worse is that a real ending did exist. Allen later wrote a script where the scientists finally return, only to discover their timeline no longer exists, erased by the changes they made to history. ABC rejected it as too bleak and confusing for family television, and so the official ending of the time tunnel became an accident of money, hesitation, and network fear. The show that was built around control, precision, and destiny ended the same way it ran, abruptly, unfinished, and stranded by forces outside the story itself. The time tunnel didn't fail because the idea was bad. It failed because television wasn't ready for it. It tried to treat history like a weekly war zone. It spent movie-level money on a TV schedule. It pushed violence, politics, and tragedy into a medium still pretending everything had to be safe by dinner. Behind the scenes, the math never worked, the cast fractured, the network panicked, and the show collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. What's left isn't just a canceled series. It's a snapshot of a moment when television aimed too high, too early, and paid the price for it. If you enjoy uncovering the real stories behind the shows that dared too much, subscribe. And if this one surprised you, hit like. More lost experiments are waiting, and some of them never make it home.